You work hard to earn money, and you probably believe that buying a house is one of the smartest financial decisions you can make. But millions of people who buy homes end up becoming poorer because of it. Therefore, today, we will reveal the silent trap of the $650,000 mortgage. And why has it kept the middle class trapped for decades? So, to gain a strategic insight into how to escape this trap, subscribe to the channel now. Welcome to the pinnacle of the American dream. Look at these lights and this condominium. It seems like the perfect setting for a successful life, doesn't it? But look closer. A gleaming plaque. $650,000. A number that shines like gold, but hides a mathematical trap. Young, hopeful couples walk into the sales office. They envision a future home, but the market sees only decades of accrued interest. I walk among them, observing the euphoria. They are about to sign a 30-year contract without understanding the true weight of that pen. Do you want to know the truth? I'll show you what happens when middle-class math meets the brutal reality of long-term financing. The scenario changes. The math is a mess. How can a family income of $50,000 sustain a debt of $650,000? Look at this graph. That's 13 years of total gross income for the principal alone. 13 years of working without eating or wearing anything. And the wall of debt begins to close in. It's not just a house, it's a financial sentence that consumes your freedom day after day. This is pure financial desperation. Compound interest, hidden fees, and inflation eroding what's left of your hard-earned monthly salary. Credit card bills and invoices come raining down. It's an endless cycle designed to keep you trapped in the real estate system forever. Meanwhile, back at the office, the toast continues. They celebrate with cheap champagne, completely oblivious to the weight of the contract they just signed. 30 years of banking servitude disguised as conquest. From the shadows, I see the truth. The contract is not just paper, it's heavy chains. Unbridled consumerism fuels this illusion. Crowded shopping malls, people buying things they don't need to impress strangers. It's all part of the same system. Keep people in debt, and they'll never have time to question the rules of the game. But I'm here to change that. I've returned to my balcony to reflect on how we can break this cycle of financial illusion. I'm Rex, the CEO of the Raccoons. My mission is to give you the knowledge that banks prefer to keep hidden in fine print. The next step is to understand the final psychological trick that makes you wish for prison itself. Are you ready to face the reality? Now imagine the scene inside the sales office. You enter. Perfect air conditioning, gourmet cafe, illuminated model of the condominium. The salesman smiles. He asks her name. Ask what you do. And ask the most important question of all. How much do you earn per month? It doesn't seem like a dangerous question. But this is exactly where the game begins. Because the seller isn't trying to find out if you can afford the house. He is trying to find out how much debt can you afford? And here comes the first psychological trick. They never talk about house price. They talk about installment. Never. This house costs $650,000. Always. The installment is around $3,800 per month. Your brain stopped thinking about the real price. Now he's only thinking about one thing. Does the installment fit within my budget? This little mental trick changes everything, because $650,000 seems impossible, but $3,800 per month seems manageable. Our brains weren't designed to calculate large numbers. It was designed to deal with immediate issues, with the current month. Then the total price disappears from the conversation. And the only thing left on the table is the monthly installment. But here's the detail that almost nobody notices. When someone buys a house with a mortgage, This person is not buying a house. She is borrowing money. And the price of this rent is called fees. Now let's look at the actual mathematics. Imagine again the house of $650,000. Most people don't pay that up front, normally with 20% entry fee. This means you pay $130,000 entry fee, and it finances the rest, i.e. $520,000 in debt. Now comes the standard American mortgage, 30 years, with an average interest rate between 6% and 7% per year. It seems like a small amount, but when you spread that out, 360 months, the story changes completely, because the monthly payment could be close to $3,500 to $4,000 per month. And at that moment, the salesman smiles and says, "That's less than many people pay in rent." This phrase is extremely powerful because it triggers a deep fear, the fear of throwing money away on rent. And suddenly, the financing seems quite clever. But there's one detail that almost no one considers. In the early years of a mortgage, the majority of the portion he's not going home. It goes towards the interest. Imagine a portion of $3,800. In the early years, approximately $3,000 could be interest only, and only $800 they reduce the real debt. In the early years, you're not buying the house. You are basically paying rent to the bank. But the story gets even more interesting, because when you multiply that portion by 30 years, the final number becomes something that rarely appears in advertisements. Because that house of $650,000, it could end up costing something close to $300,000 to $1,500,000. Try. You buy a house, and it pays two. One for you, and another whole one to the bank. But that's not even the most impressive part of this story. There is a reason why the system works this way. One reason that involves banks, construction companies, and the psychology of the middle class. A perfect mechanism which transforms a gigantic debt in something that seems completely normal. And you begin to notice something unsettling. Perhaps the system wasn't built solely to sell houses. Perhaps it was built for something much bigger. Something that keeps millions of people working for decades. But to understand this, we need to talk about something that almost no one discusses. A simple word, but extremely powerful. Leverage. And when used the wrong way, she can transform the American dream in a silent trap. Most of us grow up believing that buying a home is the ultimate financial milestone, the cornerstone of personal wealth and security. Rex certainly thinks so. Looking out over the city, he sees a legacy and a safe haven. He feels like a savvy investor. But let's shift our perspective to the top floor of a global bank. To them, the view of your home is a little different. Your dream home isn't just bricks and mortar. It is a glowing financial product pulsating on a high-speed digital trading screen. Ever heard of the eighth wonder of the world? Banks have. It is called compound interest, and they have mastered it. To the bank, compound interest is a powerful gear system, a wealth machine that spins tirelessly to generate profit from your debt. But for homeowners, those same gears can feel like a debt trap, slowly closing in as the interest stacks up over decades. Then comes the reality of the monthly payment. Rex starts to notice something is wrong as the warnings begin to pile up. Take a typical $3,800 mortgage payment. Most of it isn't going where you think it is. $3,000, the lion's share, goes straight into a bank furnace labeled interest, fueling their growth while you stay in place. Meanwhile, a tiny $800 coin labeled equity rolls away. That is the only part you actually own. Rex is devastated. He realizes that after 5 years and $200,000 in payments, he has barely reduced his debt. In the grand scheme of things, Rex is just a small cog in a massive clockwork global financial machine. Thousands of house contracts are bundled together and sold in a vibrant, frenzied market stall to international investors. The bank has already profited by selling the rights to your future labor before you have even unpacked your boxes. Rex returns to his balcony, holding his house title. But look closely at the watermark stamped across it. The bank's logo sits heavily over the document. It serves as a reminder of who is really in control. He looks at you now with a knowing gaze. Who really owns the house during this 30-year period? You or the bank? The secret they do not want you to focus on is how the system uses your dreams as leverage for their growth. Leverage is a powerful tool, but in the hands of the amortization machine, it often works against you. As the sun sets on another day, one question remains. Is the American dream yours, or does it belong to the bank? There's a phrase that almost every homebuyer has said at some point. Or you've already heard. At least now, the house is mine. This phrase comes up in family conversations, at dinner parties, at barbecues, at gatherings with friends. It is repeated as if it were a great financial victory. But there's an important detail hidden in this idea, a legal detail that many people simply ignore. When you finance a house, you don't really own it, at least not yet, because during the financing process, there is something called lien. In simple terms, this means that the bank has legal right over property until the last installment is paid. Your name may be on the contract. You can live there. You can decorate. It can be renovated. You can choose any wall color you want, but legally, the property is linked to the bank. And this has important consequences. Because if something happens to your income, if you lose your job, if you have a health problem, or simply not being able to pay installments, the bank has the right to initiate something called foreclosure. Foreclosure of the mortgage. This means the bank can take the house back and sell the property to recoup the money. In some American states, this process can happen in a few months. Years of payments can disappear quickly, and this happens to far more people than most realize. During economic crises, thousands of families discover something brutal. They spent years paying for the house, but they were paying the bank's priority. And there's something even more curious about this system. The bank rarely loses, because when you buy a house with a mortgage, you enter something called down payment, usually near 20% of the property value. In our example of the house of $650,000, this means something close to $130,000 entry fee. This money already drastically reduces the bank's risk. After that, for years, you pay interest. And interest is the true source of profit for the system. If all goes well, the bank receives interest for 30 years. If something goes wrong, he can recover the property and still keep what you've paid. That's why the mortgage system works so well for banks. It was built to reduce risk on one side and maximize the other party's return. But here's the part that really captivates a lot of people. Even knowing this, millions of people continue to buy homes beyond their means. And the reason isn't just financial, it's psychological. Because there is a very strong cultural pressure surrounding home ownership. In the United States, there is a very famous concept, the American dream. And for decades, this dream was sold with a very specific image. A house with a garden, white fence, garage, family inside, stability, security, status. This image has become so powerful. Many people believe that not owning a home means they are failing in life. But what few people realize, the problem is that this cultural narrative can push people towards making enormous financial decisions. Decisions that compromise 10 years, 20 years, sometimes 30 years of financial life. And when that happens, a very common phenomenon is emerging in the American middle class. A name that perfectly describes this situation: house poor. And when someone becomes house poor, the house that was supposed to provide security, it starts consuming almost all of a person's income. But to understand how this happens, we need to look at the hidden costs of homeownership, costs that rarely appear at the time of purchase, costs that only become apparent later, when the keys are already in your hand, and when you start to realize that the house costs more than just the mortgage. It costs much more than that. Welcome to the homeowner's dream. You've worked hard, saved your earnings, and finally, the keys to your kingdom are in your hand. The smell of fresh paint and the gleam of a modern kitchen feel like the ultimate mark of middle-class success. You pose for the perfect photo, sharing your victory with the world. Everyone sees the win, but nobody sees the math. But as the celebration fades, the clinical reality of the mortgage statement arrives. For Rex, that's $3,800 every month. It seems manageable at first, until the hidden costs of ownership begin to crawl out from the shadows of the contract. $700 for property taxes, $200 for insurance. These are the silent killers of your monthly cash flow. Then there is the maintenance. The 1% rule suggests $540 monthly just to keep the roof over your head. Suddenly, Rex is carrying a $5,200 burden on his shoulders. The house is no longer an asset. It is a weight. This is the house poor trap. You have the beautiful address, but your pockets are completely empty after the bills are paid. While your friends are investing or traveling the world, you are sitting at home, eating cereal, trapped by your four walls. When an emergency strikes, a broken pipe or a car repair, you have no choice but to reach for the glowing credit card. You begin building a castle of debt around yourself, made of maxed-out cards and overdue notices. The walls are closing in. You realize you are no longer mobile. You are tied to this house by a massive iron chain of monthly installments. A new job offer in another city? A chance to start a business? You can't move. The debt has anchored you in place. What was once a place of security has transformed into a personalized financial prison, limiting every choice you make. Rex stands on his balcony at dusk, looking at the city lights. He realizes that true wealth isn't just about what you own. He poses a profound question. What would happen to that money if it were invested in the market instead of a mortgage? Leverage is a powerful tool, but when used incorrectly, it can swallow your freedom whole. Financial literacy is your only escape. Remember, a house should be a home, not a cage. Choose your investments wisely and keep your mobility alive. Is renting really throwing money away? For decades, we've been told that homeownership is the only path to wealth. But let's look at the math. The phrase, renting is a waste, is repeated at every family dinner and barbecue. But most people never actually did the full calculation. To understand the truth, we need to compare two paths: the buyer and the renter. Let's start with the classic homeowner's journey. Meet the buyer. He buys a $650,000 house. The entry fee, including down payment and taxes, is $130,000. His total monthly cost, including mortgage, taxes, and maintenance, hits $5,200. It's a heavy burden to carry every month. Now, meet the renter. He pays $2,800 a month. He doesn't own the walls, but he owns something much more powerful: liquidity. Instead of a house, the renter puts that $130,000 entry fee directly into a diversified investment vault. Now, the real battle begins: compound interest. This is where wealth is truly built or lost over the next few decades. That initial investment grows at 7%. Over time, that original sum transforms into $990,000. But wait, the renter is also saving $2,400 every single month compared to the buyer's high costs. That money is working too. By the end of the term, the renter sits on a massive mountain of $2.9 million in pure liquid cash. Meanwhile, the buyer has paid $1.5 million in total costs for a house now worth only $1 million. The math is brutal. Rex is distressed. He realizes that interest can work for you as a renter, or against you as a homeowner with a mortgage. The difference is liquidity. The renter can access his millions instantly. The buyer's wealth is trapped in the walls of a single asset. So why do we still feel the urge to buy? Because financial decisions aren't just about math. They're about status and social pressure. Society pushes the homeowner dream as a badge of success. We buy things to impress people who aren't even watching. Before you sign that 30-year contract, ask yourself, are you choosing the path of wealth or the path of appearance? Math doesn't lie. Emotion versus math. The choice is yours. Choose wisely. We often talk about real estate in terms of math and interest rates, but there is a weight to home ownership that a spreadsheet simply cannot capture. It's the cultural pressure of the American dream, a vision of a white picket fence and a green lawn that has been sold to us for generations. From childhood, movies and television have conditioned us to believe that owning a home is the only true marker of adulthood and stability. But when you're at a dinner party and someone asks if you've bought yet, it doesn't feel like a suggestion. It feels like a judgment. There is this implicit fear that if you haven't signed a 30-year mortgage by a certain age, you are somehow falling behind in life. The reality is that while the pressure remains the same, houses now cost 10 to 12 times the average annual income compared to the past. This creates a vacuum of FOMO, the fear of missing out. We see the neon lights of the market screaming that prices will only go up. Social media exacerbates the panic. You scroll past friends holding keys, and suddenly, your financial caution feels like missed opportunity. Slick salesmen lean in, whispering that it's now or never. They sell the urgency, but they don't mention the 30-year wait. For many, that dream home quickly transforms into a financial anchor. It's a commitment that can pin you to one spot for decades. You want to take a new job, start a business, or travel the world. The anchor doesn't care. It demands to be fed every month. What was supposed to be your sanctuary can easily become your prison if the decision was driven by social pressure rather than financial readiness. So, before you sign, ask yourself, how much of your actual financial freedom are you willing to trade for an address? Professional investors use a rule of thumb. If the house costs more than 30% of your take-home pay, it's a liability, not an asset. Don't let the myth of the dream home drown your future. True freedom is having the choice to move when life calls. Ever looked at a house and thought, I love this neighborhood. I have to live here? Stop right there. Buying a home based on feelings is dangerous. To build true wealth, you need a strategy. Today, we're breaking down the math of real estate using two essential rules, the 30% rule and the rule of 100. Let's start with the 30% rule. Imagine you're eyeing a $650,000 home. Between mortgage, taxes, and insurance, you're looking at $5,200 monthly. To afford this comfortably, that payment shouldn't exceed 30% of your net income. That means you need to bring home $17,000 every month. That's an annual salary of $200,000. If you're earning $80,000, that house isn't a home. It's a financial trap consuming half your life. When your housing costs are too high, you can't invest in stocks, start a business, or even enjoy a vacation. You're essentially working just to keep the roof over your head. This leads to the house poor trap. It's a stressful existence where one missed paycheck or a broken water heater feels like the end of the world. So, how do you find your safe zone? Introduce the Rule of 100. It's a simple way to calculate what you can actually afford based on your lifestyle. Take the amount you save every month and multiply it by 100. If you save $2,000 a month, your ideal house price is $200,000. Compare that $200,000 safe zone to a $650,000 mortgage. That gap represents the stress you'll feel every single day. But what if your dream house costs more? That's where the real estate ladder comes in. You don't jump to the top, you climb it one step at a time. Start with a property you can easily afford. Build equity. Let the market work for you, and use those gains to move up to the next level strategically. The goal is to let your assets pay for your lifestyle. By following these rules, you ensure your first home is a stepping stone, not a millstone. Real estate is a game of patience and numbers. When you master the 30% rule and the rule of 100, you're not just buying a house, you're buying freedom. In our next session, we'll explore the specific steps to climb that ladder without losing your financial independence. Ready to build your strategy? Welcome. Most people are sold a dream. The big house, the perfect neighborhood, the final destination. But is it a dream or a trap? The system wants you to take a giant leap before you're ready. They want you focused on the end goal from day one. But look closer. That dream house often fades into a dark, heavy weight. We call this the initial burden, and it's incredibly heavy. Wealth isn't built in one jump. It's built with smaller, strategic steps. It's a ladder, not a leap of faith into debt. Let's look at Path A. A raccoon tries to buy a $650,000 house directly. He's immediately weighed down by a massive contract. He has no room to breathe. Every dollar he earns goes straight to interest, leaving him exhausted and stuck in one place. Now, consider Path B. The small step, Raccoon buys a modest apartment for $200,000 instead. Notice the difference? He has financial margin. This green glowing space in his budget allows him to save, invest, and prepare for the next step. This is the natural cycle of wealth. The small property grows in value, eventually funding the next larger step on the real estate ladder. But what about the hidden cost? Rex knows it well. It's called opportunity cost, and it drains your potential every single day. As the mortgage consumes your income, other lights go out. Signs for investments and financial growth begin to dim and disappear. You end up on a treadmill made of bills. You're paying off debt, but you aren't building any liquid assets. You're running in place. Why does the system push the 30-year mortgage? Because it's an economic control tool. It makes people predictable and very cautious. When you have a massive monthly installment, you're afraid to change jobs, take risks, or start a business. You need that stability cage. But is it really stability if one bad month could take it all away? Real freedom comes from owning your time, not just a deed. We return to the balcony. The city is bright, but the choice is yours. Wealth is a game of strategy, not just size. I pose this question to you. Will this house bring you closer to or further away from your ultimate financial freedom? The word is freedom. Don't let the mortgage trap stop you from climbing. Build your ladder and own your future. Now we come to the most uncomfortable part of this whole conversation. Because up to this point, we've been talking about mathematics, mortgage, fees, costs, comparisons. But there is something much deeper happening when someone takes on a debt of 30 years. Something that is almost never discussed, A huge mortgage doesn't just change your bank account, it changes your behavior. Imagine the person who bought the house for $650,000. Her monthly payment is now close to $3,800. More taxes, insurance, maintenance, totaling something close to $5,000 per month or more. Every month, there is a huge bill waiting. During 30 years. Now imagine what happens in that person's life. She starts to think twice before taking any risks. Change jobs. It might be dangerous. Starting a business. Very risky. Moving to another city. Too complicated. Because the mortgage is there. This debt creates something very powerful. One financial anchor. And when a person has a huge financial anchor, she prioritizes stability. Job stability. Income stability. Stability in routine. But it can also have a powerful side effect. The reduction of freedom. Imagine two people. The first has a huge mortgage. The second has much lower fixed costs. Now an opportunity has arisen. A new job. A business deal. Perhaps a change of city. Who has more freedom to try? The answer is usually obvious. Because when your survival depends on maintaining a high income every month, your room for experimentation decreases drastically. Millions stay in jobs they don't like because they need to pay off a gigantic debt. They tolerate harsh environments and difficult bosses. This creates something that economists sometimes describe as golden handcuffs. On the outside, it seems like a stable life, a beautiful house, a good neighborhood. But on the inside, there is a constant financial dependence. The problem isn't the house. The problem is the size of the debt in relation to your freedom. Debt starts controlling your decisions. It begins to become one invisible current, and millions of people spend decades living like this, working, paying, keeping the system running. But there is one question that rarely comes up. A simple question, but extremely powerful. How much is your financial freedom worth? Financial freedom doesn't mean never working. It means having options, growth options. When income is committed for decades, options dwindle. Instead of asking, which house can I buy? The question becomes, what kind of financial lifestyle do I want to build? And when you change the question, many answers start to change as well. One last thought. A reflection that can change how you view wealth. We have spent weeks discussing the nuances of property, the weight of mortgages, and the lure of the white picket fence. Now we reach the end. As the sun dips below the skyline, a heavy question remains. Is buying a home always the ultimate milestone of a successful life? Some call it an asset. Others call it a trap. Is it always a mistake to prioritize home ownership over other forms of financial growth? Rex shakes his head slowly. The answer isn't a simple yes or no, but a deep look into the strategy of true wealth. To understand the choice, we must look past the emotional comfort of four walls and see real estate for what it truly is. A tool. Strategic investors don't just buy houses for the sake of owning land. They weigh every decision against the concept of total liquidity. They recognize that a house is an illiquid asset. It is a massive financial commitment that ties up your capital for decades. The natural look of homeownership suggests stability, but the reality often hides a mountain of hidden risks and fluctuating net worth. Think about the opportunity cost. Every dollar locked in a mortgage is a dollar that isn't working for you elsewhere in the market. To illustrate this, let's look at two diverging paths. Two versions of a life, shaped by one single massive decision. On the left, we see the person who bought the dream early. A beautiful house, but at a staggering cost to their daily peace. On the right, we have the one who prioritized growth. A simpler lifestyle, but with a digital portfolio that is rapidly expanding. As the years pass in a blink, The difference becomes undeniable. One is managing debt. The other is building an empire. The homeowner's equity moves like a snail, while the investor's wealth mountain grows higher and higher every single day. Being house poor is a modern tragedy. You own the walls, but the walls own your time and your freedom. The investor, however, has options. They can pivot, move, and seize opportunities because their capital is not buried in the ground. But why do so many choose the path of debt? It is the invisible pressure of our social world and the desire for status. We are told that a large home is the ultimate statement to the world, a sign that we have finally arrived. But look closer. Most status symbols are just liabilities in disguise, bought to impress people who aren't even paying attention. Rex sees through the illusion. He looks at a simple, clear financial statement floating in the air, glowing with a soft, steady light. True wealth isn't about living in an expensive asset. True wealth is the absolute control over your own destiny and time. It's about having the liquidity to say no to a job you hate or yes to a life-changing adventure. We return to where we started. The city is fully lit now, a sea of lights representing millions of different choices. The question is no longer, should I buy a house? But rather, what am I really purchasing with my life's energy? Are you buying freedom, or are you simply buying a more expensive form of debt? The choice will define your future. Choose wisely. Because at the end of the day, the richest person isn't the one with the biggest house, but the most options. Wealth is freedom. Never forget that. Thank you for joining me on this journey of strategic homeownership. Take control of your finances, prioritize your liberty, and build a life that you actually own. Until next time. Now let's summarize everything into a single idea. A simple idea, but that can completely change the way you view money. Many people spend their entire lives trying to appear rich. Big house, new car, nice address. But there's a quiet detail behind many of these achievements. Debt. Too much debt. And debt has a curious effect. It can make you look prosperous on the outside, while slowly diminishing your freedom from within. Because when you've owed money for decades, part of your future has already been compromised. The way you buy this house matters. Buy something you can actually afford. It's a sound financial decision. But buying something that requires 30 years of sacrifice is very different. And here is the brutal truth that few people speak aloud. The bank doesn't sell houses. The bank sells time. 30 years of your time. 30 years of your income. 30 years of its predictability. And when you understand that, everything changes. It is no longer, can I buy this house? The question then becomes, is it worth trading 30 years of my freedom for this address? Because financial freedom doesn't mean never working. It means having options, the power to choose, to be able to change direction. And that becomes much more difficult when a huge portion of your salary is waiting for you every month. Now understand something important. The goal is much simpler. It makes you think. Think before taking on a huge debt. Think before committing decades of your income. Because when you start making conscious financial decisions, something interesting happens. You start to get out of autopilot. And when you get out of autopilot, you begin to see the system much more clearly. My name is Rex, the CEO of the Raccoons. We show how to escape financial traps that the system has built. Because smart raccoons don't fall for traps. They learn to see them first. If this video made you rethink, you're steps ahead. If you want to learn more, subscribe. We're building a community of people who prefer to be free. As long as you owe money to the bank, the house isn't really yours. You are just the caretaker of your own dreams.